Do any of you know anyone who has lived 96 years or longer? That's very impressive. Do you know anyone that you are related to that has lived 96 years or longer? It is very impressive. For some of us, we don't experience ones that live sometimes past 50, 60, or 70. It is not a surprise to any of you that you now know that yesterday Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom had passed. She was 96 years old. She was queen for 70 years, longer than any other queen or any other royalty in all of world history. To put things in perspective, she reigned for 39% of all of American history since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. 39%. One of the things that she had done was more than simply just be the queen, though. She met 13 presidents of the United States between 1952 and 2022. She met 15 British prime ministers. She saw the first woman prime minister and welcomed her to Buckingham Palace, Margaret Thatcher, elected by the people. She witnessed the following events in her lifetime. She grew up during the Great Depression. She saw Nazi fascism take over all of Europe. She saw World War II begin and end. She saw the Soviet Union rise and fall. She saw a man go into space, a man go on the moon. She saw the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She's seen more than a dozen wars fought all over the world. She saw more than 15 countries become countries. She saw the invention of the internet. She saw the fall of British control of India, Hong Kong, and Pakistan, just to name a few of the British colonies and islands. She saw the death of more than 4 family members, and she saw the experience of more than 10 Olympic Games, and she even was at the 2012 Olympic Games herself, where she and James Bond hung out. She's also seen more than 50 James Bonds, like actual James Bonds. And she also saw Britain leave the European Union. Now, just to put this in perspective, how many of you were alive before September 11th? Not a single child. So if you think about it, she has experienced so much in that lifetime that some of you have not even experienced one of those moments. How many of you were alive in 2011? So you were alive when Osama bin Laden was killed. That's probably the moment of your lifetime, even though you might not remember it. But that's probably the lifetime that will, or the event that will be of your generation. But again, not that you remember. This might be that moment for you. Many people know where they were when President John F. Kennedy died. Many people know where they were when Dr. Martin Luther King died, when the Challenger exploded in 1986, when the fall of the Berlin Wall came down in 1989, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 91. All sorts of events, and this might be your moment as children. Queen Elizabeth II was described as an eloquent woman, probably the most eloquent woman to grace the United Kingdom. In her early 20s, she ascended to the crown completely unexpectedly, born into it not necessarily, but through marriage. She never attended school, and she birthed 4 children as queen. And she was the first to ever invite the press into Buckingham Palace. Before that, the idea of royalty was a mystique, it was a mystery. No one really knew what went on at Balmoral or Buckingham Palace. But she invited the people in via radio, and she invited them on the television, which was highly unlikely. Ordinary citizens did not think this was appropriate, that one would be able to look into the life of royalty. However, we saw the Queen answer phones, write letters, decorate a Christmas tree, take her children on a drive with the top down just to have fun, and cooking at a barbecue, or even reading on the couch, things that everyone does all the time. And again, many people criticized her for this, thinking that it was inappropriate that we would see such royalty do that. However, what she did was she showed us that she was a simple person like all of us, and she was just in this position. She met with over 200 world leaders and has visited more than 100 nations or countries or islands in her lifetime. She was the queen. I mean, just think about that. Us 7th graders are about to start our Feudal Europe Middle Ages lessons, our unit. Our 8th graders have had the Feudalism Middle Ages lessons in unit. And whenever we think of a queen, we think of royalty. We think of one that is above everything, or relatable to God in some senses. We even think of the Pharaoh when we think of royalty and how one smited and how one led people into slavery. Monarchies are often thought of as things that are kind of beyond what normal people live like. We think of them as being eloquent and elegant and having the riches and having the gold and having the everything, whereas everyone else is just a citizen. Why on earth would we even think about royalty in 2022? We don't have a king, we don't have a queen, we don't have a prince or princess, but yet we still hear of these ancient traditions. Well, we've seen kings and queens, I mean not us literally, but remember King Louis the 15th, 16th, and 17th? Yeah, that didn't end well for them. Or King Henry VIII. Do any of you guys even know who King Henry VIII is? Okay. You see where I'm going with this stuff? A lot of monarchies ended by about 1900. We saw massive revolutions take over the world and just overthrow governments, and overthrow monarchies left and right. Yet the British monarchy remained. Yeah, it's true that the United Kingdom wasn't really run by royalty in the 1900s and the 2000s, but it was not necessarily about one ruling, but about one representing. Though Queen Elizabeth never though Queen Elizabeth II never visited Israel, she did make an effort to ensure that Jewish prominent figures were promoted and also that they were recognized within the kingdom. She even elevated chief rabbis and nobility to ensure that they would be protected religious figures within the United Kingdom. And one of the main reasons she openly came out and said she had never visited Israel is because as a world figure of one of royalty, she did not want to get in between the relationship of two nations, the Arab nations, obviously not of Israel, and then Israel itself, to prevent future conflict. Well, one of the things that I think we should think about is the following. When she was 7 years old, she saw a Nazi salute at 7. And she didn't really know what was going on. And yet she saw the rise of Nazism, the rise of fascism, and its complete decline. And she has seen thousands upon thousands of Holocaust survivors speak and lay their letters and talk about the Holocaust and talk about world atrocities all throughout her life. And so it's interesting. Well, one of the things I want you to think about, and then you see this of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, is the following. One of the news anchors in Great Britain said yesterday, quote, "I hope we shift our thoughts from those that were beheaded as royalty and overthrown and those who were wicked, and I hope we now think of Queen Elizabeth II. I hope we think of royalty as someone who is not someone that rules over, but someone like Queen Elizabeth II. She was the United Kingdom's grandmother, and we all love our grandmothers. May her memory be for a blessing, and we say, Amen."
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. All right, we're going to keep on.